week 5 of the fantasy football season. And here's the top 12 tight ends I'm ranking this week. The first guy, Mark Andrews of the Baltimore Ravens. So Mark Andrews, he actually came to earth in week 4 and had a bad ball game with only 2 catches, 15 yards versus a stout Buffalo Bill team. But right here in week 5, I think he's going to have a monster ball game. And we've seen the monster games in week 2 versus Miami, 25 fantasy points. And week 3 at New England with 29 fantasy points. And right here, week 5 versus division foe, the Cincinnati Bengals. And after coming off a tough loss here, I think Mark Andrews, he's going to get back on track in this game. And it wouldn't be surprising to me if he has over 100 yards and a touchdown in this one. And I got him at the number 1 tight end, number 2, Travis Kelce of the Kansas City Chiefs. So right here, him or Andrews 1 and 2, it's not really a big deal because weekly, pretty much every week, these guys are the top 2 tight ends. Besides last week, TJ Hawkinson went off for a monster fantasy day, 180 yards and 2 touchdowns. But anyway, Kelce this season, he's been solid. He's been the number 1 tight end overall in fantasy points here. And last week, another good game at a tough Tampa team. 9 catches, 92 yards, and a touchdown. And right here, week 5, I think he's going to feast once again with a 20-plus fantasy day here in points is Travis Kelce. Versus the Vegas Raiders, I give up the 6th most fantasy points to tight ends. And right now, Mahomes, he's not even forcing it to Travis Kelce, and he's just getting the ball. He's getting open and making plays. So right here, in this one, Travis Kelce once again has a big ball game. And I got him in number 2. Number 3, Darren Waller, staying in the same game of the Vegas Raiders. So right here, Darren Waller, so far it's been a struggle for him this season with only 1 eye-popping game in week 2 versus Arizona. 6 catches, 50 yards and a touchdown. Week 3 at Tennessee, 3 catches, 22 yards. And week 4 versus Denver, 3 catches, 24 yards. So maybe he's not 100%. Maybe he's banged up, whatever the case may be. Because right here, you would think the field would be open a little more with Davante Adams on this Vegas Raider team. But anyway, week 5, a good matchup at Kansas City, a team he usually plays solid versus, and they give up the 8th most fantasy points. If Waller can't get it done this week here, he'll definitely drop in the rankings in later weeks at the tight end position. But right now, I got him at 3, number 4, Dallas Goddard of the Philadelphia Eagles. So Goddard, he's having a good season here for this Eagle team. And he's got a very plus matchup at the Arizona Cardinals that give up the most fantasy points to tight ends on the season. So Goddard, he's at double-digit fantasy games the last 3 games in a row. Week 2 versus Minnesota, 13 fantasy points. Week 3 at Washington, 11. And week 4 versus Jacksonville in that one, 5 catches, 72 yards in a slick game. So right here, Goddard, he hasn't had that monster ball game where he went for 20-plus fantasy points. But right now, he's playing good football. Him and Hertz have a great rapport. And I got him in number 4 with the worst defense versus tight ends this season. He's going to have a good one. Number 5, TJ Hawkinson of the Detroit Lions. So Hawkinson, he exploded after getting off to a poor start the first 3 weeks of the season. Week 3, if he didn't get that touchdown, it would have only been 3 catches, 18 yards. But week 4 versus Seattle in a classic shootout, 48-45 loss for this Detroit Lion team. 8 catches, 179 receiving yards. 2 touchdowns, a 2-point conversion on 12 targets. So right now, week 5 in New England, they give up the 4th most fantasy points to tight ends. I think if St. Brown's out, obviously he's going to get peppered with targets. And depending the game script as well, I think this ball game will be close with the Lions and the Patriots here. But TJ Hawkinson, we know, is a playmaker and a red zone target. And this week here, I'm not going to get too hyped about that one game he had last week, but I like the matchup once again. And I got him in number 5. Number 6, Gerald Everett of the Los Angeles Chargers. So Gerald Everett, he's having a great season with 3 ball games with double-digit fantasy points in the first 4 this year. So week 3 versus Jacksonville, it was just a bump in the road. 2 catches, 25 yards. But week 4 Houston, he set the tone early in that one with a first quarter touchdown and finished with 5 catches, 61 yards, and a touch. So right here, week 5 at Cleveland. Cleveland's been pretty stout versus tight ends, giving up the 8th least amount of fantasy points. But I don't care. Gerald Everett's an athlete. Him and Justin Herbert, they're building up that rapport weekly. And who knows when Keenan Allen's coming back. Even if Keenan Allen comes back, that field's going to open up for Gerald Everett even more with single coverage or zone coverage on him here. So right now, he's been a red zone threat so far for this Charger team. He's making plays. He's lining up in different spots. And right now, this week, I got him in number 6, number 7, Zach Ertz of the Arizona Cardinals. So Zach Ertz, he's having a very solid fantasy season here. And one of the better tight ends, no doubt about it. in the early going. So right now with double-digit fantasy points in PPR leagues in the first 4 weeks. And week 5 here versus old team, the Philadelphia Eagles, he's going to want to stick it to them, Zach Ertz. No doubt about it. So right here in this one versus Philly, him and Goddard, the battle of two tight ends in this one, even though I think Goddard has a better game since Arizona can't cover tight ends. But once again, I think Ertz in this one, 40 or 50 yards and possibly finding the end zone. And I got him in number 7. Number 8, George Kittle of the San Francisco 49ers. So Kittle, he missed the first 2 weeks of the season with injury. And so far, we haven't seen much from him. Week 3 at Denver, 4 catches, 28 yards. And then week 4 versus the Rams, 2 catches, 24 yards. And at the moment, he had a touchdown in that game. But then under review, he stepped out of bounds in the back of the end zone, or he would have had a good fantasy day with over 12 fantasy points. So right now, week 5, not a great matchup on paper at Carolina. That gives up the 7th least amount of fantasy points to tight ends. But right here, Jimmy G, he's looking more comfortable as the weeks are going on since Trey Lance has been out. And George Kittle, maybe he's not back into shape 100%. But right here at Carolina, I could see him having a decent ball game. But right now, I'm limited him down to number 8, number 9, Tyler Higbee of the Los Angeles Rams. So Higbee, the number 2 target in that passing game, behind obviously Cooper Kupp, Allen Robinson. You would think you would see more out of him. We've seen nothing out of him. And Von Jefferson's hurt, and Odell Beckham, they do want him back, but he's going to be out a while still with the ACL. But anyway, Higbee, he's having a good season. The first 3 out of 4 ball games this year here with double-digit fantasy points. In week 4 at San Francisco, a monster ball game. 10 catches, 73 yards on 14 targets. So right here, week 5 versus the Dallas Cowboys, I think we're going to see more of the same from Tyler Higbee, getting peppered with targets. And it's pretty much him and Cooper Kupp, like I said, on this offense. And we know this Cowboy pass rush is great getting to the quarterback. And this Ram team definitely has offensive woes on the line. So right here, you're going to see some dump-offs to Higbee. Going to be some short routes. And once again, I think he has a good ball game. And I got him in number 9, number 10, Kyle Pitts of the Atlanta Falcons. So Kyle Pitts, it hasn't been that good of a season. Only one double-digit fantasy game this year here. 5 catches, 87 yards, and the rest under 4 fantasy points in the other 3 ball games. So right here, week 5 at Tampa, it's a ball game where this Atlanta Falcon team's going to have to throw a lot, where I think the game script goes, this Tampa team gets off to a 10, 14-point lead, and then got to play catch-up. And Marcus Mariota, he hasn't been the ideal quarterback for a Kyle Pitts right now. Kyle Pitts, he's a guy that's been taken in the 3rd, 4th round of most fantasy drafts coming into the season. So it's definitely concerning with Kyle Pitts, no doubt about it. And he's a guy that if he has another bad week, I don't know what fantasy owners are going to do with him. But right now, I got him in number 10 with a chance to salvage a ball game with maybe 40, 50 yards and possibly finding the end zone. Number 11, Robert Tonyan of the Green Bay Packers. So Tanyan's worked his way back into shape over the last few weeks after coming off the ACL injury. So week 3 at Tampa, 6 catches, 37 yards. And week 4 versus the Pats, 2 catches, 22 yards, and a touchdown. So a couple seasons ago, him and Aaron Rodgers had a good rapport. And right now, week 5 versus the Giants in London, I think Robert Tonyan could have 40, 50 yards in this ball game and possibly find the end zone. The Giants, they don't really have great linebackers. They don't have great coverage as well on tight ends. And I think Robert Tonyan in this one has a good ball game. And Aaron Rodgers, he's looking for him, especially in the red zone. He's a big target, and I got him at number 11 and the 12th and final tight end I'm ranking this week's Pat Freiermuth of the Pittsburgh Steelers. I know it's a very tough matchup at the Buffalo Bills that give up the 3rd least amount of fantasy points to tight ends on the season. But Freiermuth this season, he's playing good football. One of the only bright spots pretty much on the Steeler offense. And Kenny Pickett, what a bad way to get his first NFL start versus a great Buffalo Bill defense. So right here, Freiermuth with 3 out of 4 fantasy games this season with double-digit fantasy games. And week 4 versus the Jets was his best game to date. 7 catches, 85 yards on 9 targets. It's definitely going to be a tough game in Buffalo, but they're going to have to be playing for points and catch up in garbage time. And I think Freiermuth could reach double digits, possibly once again in PPR league. So that's the top 12 tight ends I'm ranking here for week 5 of the fantasy football season.